Now let's study the side effects of COCs. So these side effects can be divided into mild, moderate and severe side effects. So mild we can learn by the mnemonic normal or the mild side effects. So N stands for nausea, vomiting. Then they can cause edema and weight gain. They can cause recurrent headache or migraine. They can cause mastalgia. They can cause abnormal bleeding, and there can be loss of withdrawal bleeding. Then what are the moderate side effects? So we can remember by A, B, C. A for acne, B for breakthrough bleeding and C for cholestasis. Then there can be severe side effects. So they are all C's. That is, they have severe side effects, like they increase the risk of MI, stroke, thromboembolism. They have CNS side effects, they can lead to depression, and as we mentioned before, they increase the risk of cancers like breast carcinoma and cervical carcinoma. Now let's study when do we start OCPs. So OCPs are to be started within 5 to maximum 7 days of the menstrual cycle. If the patient starts them after 5 days of last menstrual period, she has to use a backup method for the next 7 days. In a breastfeeding female, we can only start after minimum 6 months of delivery because of the increased risk of venous thromboembolism and also because they alter the quality of the breast milk. In non-breastfeeding postpartum females, we can start them after 3 weeks of delivery. And the patient is to be advised that she has to start the next pack irrespective of whether or not she has bleeding. Now let's study how will we manage if the patient comes to us and she says that she has missed a pill. So first of all, we have to ask her what kind of pill that she missed. If she has simply missed a non-hormonal pill, then she can be advised to just discard the pill and continue the packet as before. Then if she has missed 1 or 2 hormonal pills, so she's to be advised that she will take 1 pill as soon as she remembers, and then she can continue the rest of the packet as before. Now we come to a little more complicated part, that is, if she comes and she tells us that she has missed 3 pills in the first or the second week of her menstrual cycle. So in this case, she is advised to take 1 pill as soon as possible. She has to use a backup method for 7 days, and she is given an emergency contraceptive pill if she has had intercourse in the last 72 hours. Now if she says that she has missed 3 pills and she is in the 3rd week of her menstrual cycle, so in this case we will tell her to take 1 pill as soon as possible, to finish the rest of the hormonal pills in the packet, and then to start a new hormonal pill the next day without taking the non-hormonal pills in between. In addition, she has to use backup for 7 days, and she has to use an emergency contraceptive pill if she has had intercourse within the last 72 hours. Now for pills which contain 20 microgram ethinyl estradiol, missing more than equal to 2 pills is managed in the same way as missing more than equal to 3 pills that we discussed above. So let's quickly revise the management of missed pills. If she misses a non-hormonal pill, she can simply discard it and continue as before. If she has missed 1 or 2 hormonal pills, she has to take 1 pill as soon as she remembers and continue the rest as before. If she has missed more than equal to 3 pills in the first or second week, she has to take 1 pill as soon as possible, backup for 7 days, and emergency contraception if intercourse in the last 72 hours. If she has missed 3 pills in the 3rd week, she has to take 1 pill as soon as possible, finish the hormonal pills, start a new pack, use a backup for 7 days, and take an emergency contraceptive pill if she has had intercourse in the last 72 hours. And for pills containing 20 microgram ethinyl estradiol, missing more than equal to 2 pills is managed in the same way as missing more than equal to 3 pills above. Now let's come to progesterone only pills, which are also known as POPs and also known as mini pills. So guys, we should know that the safety margin of POPs is only for a period of 3 hours. So what do we mean by that? the patient has to be told that she has to take POPs at exactly the same time every day. Maximum she can delay it for a period of 3 hours. Beyond that, the efficacy of the pills will decrease. The only exception to this safety margin of 3 hours is the new POP, which is known as Cerazette, which contains 75 microgram of desogestrel, and this has a safety margin of 12 hours. So what are the advantages of POPs? So as we talked that COCs we cannot give to females who are breastfeeding because they have a negative impact on the quality and the quantity of breast milk. So POPs have no such side effects and they are the best for breastfeeding females. Also, because they do not have estrogen, so they do not have the estrogenic side effects, so they are safer for patients with coronary artery disease or smokers or patients with epilepsy. However, they do have certain side effects, the most common being irregular menstrual cycles. They can cause progesteronic side effects, that is breast pain, headache, migraine, cholestasis, weight gain or edema, and acne. What are the disadvantages when we compare to COCs? They have a higher failure rate and they are more expensive. Let's come to the third method of oral contraception, that is Centroman. Now this Centroman tablets, they come under the brand name of Chaya. The primary compound that they have is ormeloxifene, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, and they have been advocated by the government of India by the name of Saheli. So these four terms, Centroman, Chaya, ormeloxifene and Saheli, they all refer to the same thing. So this is a non-hormonal and a non-steroidal contraceptive which contains 30 mg of Centroman. What is the mechanism of action? It is a selective estrogen receptor modulator which has anti-estrogenic effect on endometrium. So it inhibits implantation. Also, it has anti-estrogenic effect on the breasts and it has an estrogenic effect on the bones. And what is the dose? It is to be given bi-weekly for the first 3 months, followed by weekly for as long as contraception is required. So let's quickly revise. Centroman or Chaya or ormeloxifene or Saheli is a non-hormonal, non-steroidal SERM containing 30 mg of Centroman, functions by its anti-estrogenic effect on the endometrium, and the dosage is bi-weekly for the first 3 months followed by weekly. What are the advantages? It is safe in lactation. As we said, it has inhibitory effect on the breast, so it prevents breast carcinoma. As we said, it has estrogenic effect on the bones, so it promotes bone formation. It has a high efficacy and it is also used to treat menorrhagia, fibroids and other gynecological conditions. And how is it used? It is used in double dosage, that is 60 mg in the same schedule, that is bi-weekly for the first 3 months followed by weekly for as long as required. Now what are the disadvantages? It can cause headache, nausea, vomiting, irregular menstrual cycles, and friends, we have to remember that it is not to be given for patients who have PCOS, as it also promotes multifollicular development. It is not for patients with hepatic or renal dysfunction and not for patients with any chronic illness like tuberculosis. Now let's come to injectable contraceptives or implants. So what is the most common one that we've all heard of is medroxyprogesterone acetate. This medroxyprogesterone acetate is advocated by the government of India by the name of Antara. So these two terms, medroxyprogesterone acetate and Antara, mean the same thing. What is the dosage? 150 mg. It is given intramuscular and it is administered 3 monthly. What is the site of injection? So it can be given in the gluteal muscle, it can be given in the deltoid, or it can be given in the outer anterior thigh. Now when we are giving, we have to remember to tell the patient not to rub the site after we have given the injection. And why is that? Because it is a deeper formulation, it has to remain stored in the muscle and to be slowly released. If the patient will rub the site, it will cause early release and the drug will not be effective for 3 months that we intend it to be. The mechanism of action is the same as POPs. When is it to be given? It is to be given within the 7 days of the last menstrual period. The side effects are also the same as POPs. Now, in medroxyprogesterone acetate, we have two terms. One is defaulter and one is a dropout client. So, what is defaulter? Defaulter is when the patient comes to us within the grace period. So, what is the grace period in MPA? Grace period is 2 weeks before or 4 weeks after the scheduled date of injection. In this case, we have to give the patient DMPA and no backup is required. However, when we have something known as a dropout client, that is the client coming to us after the grace period, in this case we will give the injection, but we have to advise the patient back up for a period of 7 days. So let's quickly revise medroxyprogesterone acetate. It comes by the name of Antara program. What is the dosage? 150 mg IM 3 monthly. It can be given in the gluteal deltoid muscle or in the outer anterior thigh. It is to be given within the 7 days of the last menstrual period. The mechanism of action and side effects are the same as progesterone only pills. A defaulter is a client who comes to us within the grace period, that is 2 weeks before or 4 weeks after the scheduled date of injection. In this case, we can simply give the injection and no backup is required. A dropout client who comes to us after the grace period, in this case we will give the injection but advise the patient back up for a period of 7 days. Other injectables that we have is Depo-Sub-Provera, which is a 104 mg injection which is given subcutaneously and it works for a period of 3 months. We also have NET-N or norethindrone enanthate, which contains 200 mg of norethindrone. It is given IM and it functions for a period of 2 months. Then we also have Cyana, which also contains 104 mg and it is to be given 3 monthly. So guys, now let's come to a new method of contraception, that is implants. So implants can be broadly divided into levonorgestrel containing implants and etonorgestrel containing implants. So as the name suggests, they are basically the implants which contain different kinds of progesterones, that is levonorgestrel or etonorgestrel. So levonorgestrel containing implants, we have 3 kinds. We have Norplant, which was the first implant that came, which has 6 capsules of 36 milligram levonorgestrel each. They are to be implanted, usually implanted in the forearm, and there they will slowly release the drug and they will help us in providing contraception. Newer ones that we have are Jadel, which contains 2 capsules each containing 75 mg levonorgestrel, and we have Cyno implant, which also have the same combination. So in this picture below you can see the Norplant, that are 6 capsules which are arranged in a fan shaped manner and are inserted into the forearm. Then what are etonorgestrel containing? We have Implanon and Nexplanon. So please know that Implanon is the only implant which is available in India. It has a single rod containing 68 mg etonorgestrel and it is effective for a period of 3 years. So again, let's quickly revise. Implants can be levonorgestrel containing, that is Norplant, Jadel or Cyno implant. Norplant has 6 capsules of 36 mg LNG each. Jadel and Cyno implant have 2 capsules of 75 mg LNG each. Etonorgestrel containing we have Implanon and Nexplanon. Implanon has 1 rod containing 68 mg etonorgestrel which is effective for a period of 3 years and it is the only implant which is available in India. Now let's come to the topic of emergency contraception, which is also known as interception or the morning after pill. So we know it by the name of Unwanted 72, which is, this is the brand name which is most commonly used. So what is the risk of pregnancy after a single unprotected intercourse? It is as high as 8%. What is the mechanism of action by which these emergency contraceptive pills act? So simply how we can remember it? We can remember it as These ECPs will inhibit fertilization or ovulation or implantation depending on the phase of the menstrual cycle in which they are taken. What are the methods that we have? So the most common one and the only one which is FDA approved and is approved by the Government of India is the levonorgestrel tablet. We use 0.75 mg containing 2 tablets which are taken by the patient 12 hours apart within 72 hours of intercourse. Secondly, we have COCs. So COCs are given by the USPES regime. USPES regime constitutes 2 tablets of COCs or 4 tablets of low dose COCs which are taken 12 hours apart within 72 hours of intercourse. Thirdly, we have ulipristal acetate which is given single dose 30 mg within 5 days of intercourse. It comes by the name of ELA1. Then we have IUCD which can be given within 5 days. So please remember that we can give other IUCDs, but levonorgestrel containing IUCD or Mirena that we talked about, this should not be given. Why? Because its efficacy as an emergency contraceptive is not known. And lastly, mifepristone 600 mg single dose can also be used, but it is not used commonly. So what are the methods? Levonorgestrel tablets 0.75 mg, 2 tablets 12 hours apart. COCs, we can use ulipristal 30 mg single dose. We can use IUCD. Ulipristal and IUCD can be used within 5 days, whereas COCs and LNG can only be used within 3 days. What are the disadvantages of emergency contraception? So the most common disadvantages, they cause nausea and vomiting. So the patient has to be told that if she has vomiting within 2 hours of taking the tablet, she should repeat the dose. Also, the female should not expect to menstruate immediately after taking the pill, as the pills simply will cause delayed menstruation by 2 to 3 days. However, if the menstruation is delayed by more than a week, we should rule out pregnancy. So, okay, now we have a term which is long-acting reversible contraceptives or LARCs. So, what are LARCs? They are the methods which need administration less than once per cycle. So, what are the methods that we have under LARC? We have IUCDs, LNG containing intrauterine system, injectables and implants. Now let's read about the recent advances that we have in contraception. What are the recent advances? First of all, we have vaginal rings, also known as Nuva ring. So now this is a simple ring which is worn by the female for 3 weeks and then it is removed for 1 week, and during that time withdrawal bleeding will occur. Let's remember the composition. It has 15 micrograms ethinyl estradiol and 120 micrograms of etonorgestrel. Now recently we have also developed transdermal patches which come under the name of Tuorla and Ortho-Evra. So they are simply patches. They are usually weekly patches which are worn for 3 weeks followed by a patch-free week, and in that week the patient will have withdrawal bleeding. We also have transdermal gels, transdermal sprays, and the latest development is of immunocontraception, in which we use vaccines. We have anti-ovum vaccine, anti-conceptus vaccine and anti-HCG vaccine. So in this photo here you can see the Nuva ring. Now let's come to the reversible methods of male contraception. Okay, so we have heard about Rhysug. What is Rhysug? Rhysug is reversible inhibition of sperms under guidance. Now this is a method which is being developed in India. It simply uses a compound, styrene maleic anhydride, which is injected into the sperms. It produces an electric charge which will nullify the electric charge of sperms, and hence they will not be able to fertilize the ovum. This method, as the name suggests, is reversible, which is the biggest advantage of this method. And how can we reverse it? By simple injection of soda bicarbonate, which will nullify the action of styrene maleic anhydride. So as we said, it is under phase 3 trials in India under the ICMR. Then we have Gossypol. Now Gossypol was developed in China. It contains an aldehyde derived from the cotton plant which inhibits spermatogenesis and decreases sperm motility. But what was the biggest disadvantage was that it caused decreased libido, and hence it did not become popular. Now we have recent developments which are copper containing intravascular device. We have testosterone containing injectables, implants, transdermal patches and gels, testosterone buccal system, and we have a newer one which is known as adjuvin. This adjuvin binds to the FSH receptor on the Sertoli cells. So what are the reversible methods of male contraception? First of all, we have Rysuk, or reversible inhibition of sperms under guidance, which works by using styrene malic anhydride and is reversed by injecting soda bicarb. We have Gossypol, which caused decreased libido and hence is not the preferred choice. We have copper containing intravascular device, injectable, implants, patches, gels, testosterone buccal system, and adjuvin. Now coming to the permanent method of male contraception, which we all know is by vasectomy. The latest one that we are using now is non-scalpel vasectomy. As the name suggests, we do not use a scalpel. In this, a very small incision is given which does not even need stitching later on. Now this is a permanent method, but what is the disadvantage? That it is effective only after 3 months. So friends, you all remember that spermatogenesis takes around 72 to 74 days. So after vasectomy, we need to tell the patient that the efficacy will only start after 3 months or 20 ejaculations. And as follows, the ligation certificate is given to the patient only after 3 months once he has a negative semen analysis report. Now let's come to the permanent method of female contraception, that is tubal ligation. Now tubal ligation can be divided in several ways. First of all, let's discuss the division according to the timing when we do the surgery. So it can be interval sterilization, which is done more than 6 weeks after delivery, or it can be done within 7 days of the last menstrual period. Now please remember that we can also do it after 7 days of last menstrual period, but only after ensuring that the patient is not pregnant. Now it can be done postpartum, which is done after 24 hours but within 7 days of delivery. It can be done concurrent with MTP. So after a surgical abortion, we can do it within 7 days, and after a medical abortion, we will only do it after the next menstrual cycle, hence ensuring that she is no more pregnant. Now what are the eligibility criteria? The female should be ever married. She should be between 22 to 49 years of age. She should have at least one child of more than equal to 1 year of age. The partner or the spouse must not have undergone sterilization. She should be in a sound state of mind, and we should remember that the consent of the partner is not required. So what are the eligibility criteria? She should be ever married, 22 to 49 years of age. She should have at least one child of more than equal to 1 year of age. The partner should not have undergone sterilization. She should be in a sound state of mind, and consent of only the female patient is required and not of the partner. Now what are the routes by which we can do tubal ligation? So we can do it abdominally, vaginally, or hysteroscopically. In abdominal, we can do it by an open technique, which is the conventional technique, or by a laparotomy. We can do it by a mini laparotomy. As the name suggests, by mini we simply mean that we give a smaller incision of around 2 to 3 centimeters size, or we can do it laparoscopically. So first of all, let's discuss the surgical techniques of open sterilization, that is when we are doing it by a laparotomy or a mini laparotomy. So most commonly that we do is Pomeroy's technique or the modified Pomeroy's technique. In this, simply we will lift up a segment of the fallopian tube, we will ligate the segment, and then we will resect between the two ligatures. Then we will take a second free tie beneath this loop that we created. Secondly, we have the Parkland technique. In Parkland technique, the tube is ligated proximally and distally, and then the intervening segment is excised. So because in Parkland technique we are not making any loop, this avoids the initial proximity of the cut ends, and it has an even lower failure rate than Pomeroy's technique. Then we have the Irving's technique, in which the proximal stump is buried within a myometrial tunnel and the distal in the mesosalpinx. So hence it has an even lower failure rate than the above two. Then we have the Madlener technique. In Madlener technique, the tube was only crushed and ligated, it was not excised. So as we can expect, it had a higher failure rate and hence is not the preferred technique. Then we have Yoshida technique, in which the proximal stump is buried in the mesosalpinx. And lastly, we have something known as Kroner's fimbriectomy. So as the name suggests, we simply excise the fimbrial portion of the fallopian tube. So now in this, the failure rate is 0, but what is the problem? Recanalization is not possible and hence it is not preferred. So what is the most commonly used? The Pomeroy's technique. We also have Parkland technique, in which we will simply ligate the tube proximally and distally and then excise the intervening segment. We have the Irving technique, in which proximal stump is buried in the myometrial tunnel and distal in the mesosalpinx. Madlener technique, in which tube is only crushed and ligated, not excised. Yoshida technique, in which proximal stump is buried in the mesosalpinx. And Kroner's fimbriectomy, which has a 0 failure rate. So now what are the salient features of doing an open tubal ligation? We should know what is the site of ligation. It is done 2 to 3 centimeters from the cornual end. What is the part of the fallopian tube which is ligated? It is the isthmus. What is the stitch or the suture material that we use? It is the catgut or the chromic catgut. How much length of the fallopian tube is to be excised? So we should know that minimum 1 centimeter portion is to be excised. And after doing ligation, when will we give the patient ligation certificate? It is to be given after minimum of 1 month, once the patient has resumed her menstrual cycle and she has a negative urine pregnancy test. So let's quickly revise this. The site of ligation is 2 to 3 centimeters from the cornual end. It is done at the isthmus using catgut or chromic catgut. Minimum 1 centimeter portion is excised and ligation certificate is given after 1 month once the patient has resumed her menstrual cycle and she has a negative UPT. Now let's discuss laparoscopic sterilization. So first of all, we should know laparoscopic sterilization is not for postpartum cases or to be done concurrent with MTP if the period of gestation is more than 12 weeks. And why is that? Because as we can guess, the fallopian tubes at that time would be more edematous and hence the failure rate of laparoscopic sterilization would be more in that case. What are the methods by which we can do laparoscopic sterilization? We can use electrocoagulation or cautery. We can use clips, which are Filshie clips or Halka Clemens clip. We can use fallope rings. So as we know, fallope rings are the most commonly used method of laparoscopic sterilization. Fallope rings are made of silicone rubber containing 5% barium sulfate. And what is the how can we compare the reversibility of these three? So the reversibility by clips is the best, followed by the fallope rings, followed by coagulation. So now in this picture we can see the Filshie clips and this is the picture showing fallope rings. Now we have newer technique of hysteroscopic sterilization. So as the name suggests, in hysteroscopic sterilization we do a hysteroscopy, then we insert a certain substance into the fallopian tubes. This substance will slowly cause sclerosis and hence it will cause tubal blockage. What is the disadvantage of that? This method requires minimum 3 months to be effective, and the fact that it is irreversible. So what are the methods by which we can do hysteroscopic sterilization? So first of all, we have Essure. So as you can see in this picture, Essure contains a micro insert which has a stainless steel inner coil and a nickel plus titanium outer coil. It incites an inflammatory response causing tubal blockage, and it requires a hysterosalpingography after 3 months of insertion to confirm the occlusion of the tube. Then we have the second one, that is Adiana. In Adiana, we do controlled thermal damage of the endosalpinx followed by insertion of a biocompatible matrix plug, as you can see in this picture. Thirdly, we have quinacrine, which contains 736 mg pellets which slowly dissolve and replace the tube with fibrous tissue. As we discussed, the disadvantage being it requires 3 months to be effective and it is irreversible. Now, what are the legal issues as far as tubal ligation is concerned? So, we should remember that the patient is given a compensation of as high as 30,000 rupees in case failure of tubal ligation occurs. For any medical comorbidities arising within 60 days of the surgery, the patient is given 25,000 rupees. If the client expires within 7 days of surgery, the family is given 2 lakh rupees. If death occurs within 8 to 30 days, the family is given 50,000 rupees, and even the doctors are covered for litigations up to 2 lakhs per claim, up to 4 claims per year. Friends, if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me in the comment section below. Now let's discuss the failure rates as far as our contraceptives are concerned. So friend, you will know that failure rates of contraceptives are discussed in terms of 100 women years. That is, the females who are, or the couples who are experiencing the failure of contraception into 1200 divided by the total couples who are using the method multiplied by the total months of use. So let's revise the formula for 100 women years. So 100 women years is equal to the number of couples who experienced failure multiplied by 1200 divided by the couples using the method multiplied by the months of use. Also friends, with every contraceptive we have the term perfect use. As the name suggests, perfect use would be if the couple will use the method in the perfect way in which it is described, and we have something known as the typical use, in which usually a person will use the method. So of course with typical use the failure rate is higher than with perfect use. So for natural methods the failure rates are as high as 5 to 20%. With male condoms the failure rates are between 2 to 15%. Female condoms have a higher failure rate than male condoms, between 5 to 20%. Combined oral contraceptives are extremely efficacious, having a failure rate of 0.3% to maximum 3% with typical use. Now progesterone only pills, if they are given to breastfeeding females, because there would be any additional effect of lactational amenorrhea in that time, the failure rate would be between 0.3 to 1%, whereas for non-breastfeeding females, POPs have a failure rate of ranging from 1 to 10%. IUCDs have a failure rate of 0.5 to 2%. DMPA has between 0.5 to 4%. Centroman has between 1 to 2%. Male sterilization has a failure rate of 0.2 to 0.4%. Open ligation has a failure rate of 0.1 to 0.2%, and laparoscopic ligation has a failure rate of 0.2 to 0.6%. Lastly, we should also know that there is something known as the MEC categories. MEC stands for medical eligibility criteria. So these are the categories which are used to discuss when a contraceptive method should be used. So if any method falls under MEC category 1, it means that the method only has its advantages and it can be used in any circumstance. MEC category 2 refers to the fact that advantages are more than the risks and we can use the method. MEC category 3 means that the disadvantages or the risks are more than the advantages, and generally we should not recommend that method in that case. And fourthly, or MEC category 4 is a strict contraindication when a particular contraceptive choice should not be used. So we have a WHO contraceptive wheel which gives these MEC criteria for all the contraceptives that we have, that is the IUCD or the levonorgestrel containing IUCD for injectables, implants, for COCs and for POPs. This contraceptive wheel is freely available and we can use it as a guide when we are advising our patients on the method to use, depending on any medical or surgical or any other comorbidity that the patient has. So thank you friends. Hope this video was beneficial for you. If you have any problems, please discuss it with me in the comment section below. Once again, thank you for your patience.